And thank you indeed for staying with Citizen Weekend. And as earlier mentioned, my guest in studio tonight, Lee Kinyanjui, Chairman of the Board of the National Transport and Safety Authority. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Of course, in current weeks, this having been the festive season, a lot of reports on road fatalities, road carnage. What are the current statistics?
Thank you. For the last, up to last night midnight, we have about 48 fatalities. And I think what is important to note here is that out of the 48, 20 are pedestrians, because a lot of times we focus on the vehicles, but we forget also quite some fatal accidents are also happening. People crossing the roads in the wrong place or recklessly, some of them drunk. So out of the 48, about 45%, and that is the case even last year's numbers, are actually pedestrians. So even as we focus on other sectors, I think what that simply tells us, we also need to come up with a very clear program on how we are going to deal with pedestrians, because they account for nearly half. So we also want to be guided by that.
Right.
But out of that, 14 are, out of the 48, the other 14 are actually passengers,
and
of different vehicles.
Of course, we're not factoring in the reports that have come in today, which have increased that number.
Yeah.
But then a question that came in there, therein regarding the more than half of the fatalities being pedestrians, addressed the night ban on PSVs, and a lot of people then saying, is the issue the darkness, or are there other underlying issues that need to first be looked into?
Thank you. One, there's no one single thing that will sort all our problems. Issues vary from drunken driving, and also passengers who are drunk, and you drink across and you live on the other side and you want to cross. So the first thing I think is the drunkenness, both on the driver and also on the people actually using the road. The other one is over speeding. And I think on this, I must say that a vehicle driving at 80 kilometers per hour, even if they had a head-on collision, you would not have the kind of fatalities we've had. So really, speed is a key thing. And I think it is for that reason that we have invested in speed guns across the country to try and encourage people to drive at the recommended speeds. And then third one is overloading. One of the worst things maybe we may not always want to go back is the accident we had at Ntulele. The bus had already about 5.5 tons of cargo, which means even before you have the passengers come in, you're almost overloaded. So I think these are the issues, and I think we have come up with regulations that are trying to address some of these issues. For example, from February, we will not allow vehicles to have an overhead carrier where you put all the cargo on top, because what that does is also to raise the center of gravity, and therefore the stability of the vehicle is compromised. So we have come up with regulations that were gazetted on the 17th that are trying to address all these things. On the issue of speed, you may be aware that we have introduced a new speed governor that is going to use GPS and is also going to have a record, so that even if you're caught today, we can be able to tell your speed for the last 30 days. But the current speed governor that we've been having, unless you're caught overspeeding at that particular time, nobody else would be able to know whether you're overspeeding in the last 1 week or before. So the reality is that the regulations we've gazetted, if well implemented, and I want to say this, that the implementation is not just for the police or for NTSA, it's for us all. That even before we come and tell you to drive at the recommended speeds, you ought to take it upon yourself to ensure that you're driving at the right speed, you do not overload, and have your seatbelt on, and all these other issues.
Right, and you as the NTSA, of course, are expected to bring sanity on our roads, the ghost of road carnage. This has been talk year in, year out, same story. And the problem that a lot of people, the thing that a lot of people are saying is the problem is enforcement. We look back at the Michuki rules, those seem to have been working pretty well. And a lot of people just say perhaps the more simple and what we know has worked before is perhaps what could be reverted to avoid, you know, a lot of the going back and forth. What are your views on that?
The reality is that the Michuki laws were never thrown out. The rules still exist today. The reality is that we have not been enforcing them. And I think I want to agree with you that one of the biggest challenges we have is enforcement. But even then, what we need to do is to ask ourselves what we must do to be able to enforce the regulations. But they are there, they are good. In fact, the regulations we've brought have not come to replace the Michuki rules. They're just supplementing what the Michuki rules had, because there are certain realities that come with time, and transport is also a dynamic field. So all I would say is that yes, we have challenges in enforcement, and one of the things we're trying to do is to incorporate technology. For example, the issue of having the alcohol blows, you know, it's straightforward. You are beyond this limit, you'll be taken to court. We'll fix...
and on the alcohol blow, before you continue, and you know, I'm just looking at what Kenyans here are saying, that perhaps the alcohol blow is targeting the wrong people, and this is arguable because when you target perhaps the middle class that are coming from nightclubs, and yet the problem that we're seeing particularly right now in the festive season is with our PSVs, you know, the long stretches, and these are people that are ferrying hundreds of lives of Kenyans. Where is our attention being taken, and is it being taken to the right place? Are we focusing on the right place?
I think one of the biggest challenges we face is that every sector you try to touch will tell you, don't touch us, go to the other one. You go to the PSV, they tell us, don't touch us, go to the heavy commercial. In reality, everybody contributes to this whole thing. And you know, like in Nairobi, for example, go to Langata Road, every day in the morning, those roundabouts will have accidents across. So we tend to say that there's no one single thing that will sort all our problems. So it is about a multiplicity of issues that must be put. We have what you're calling the safety first, where we have the magistrates and everybody across all the roads on the highways, and they are checking on speed, the issue of alcohol, the state of the roads, and maybe also the other thing I wanted to mention is, in the past when you take your vehicle for inspection, there's the issue of tires. Very few Kenyans appreciate the fact that tires actually expire. They have an expiry date. And as a result of that, you have a lot of tire bursts, including the accident we had in Chuka. And all we'll be trying to do is maybe to enlighten them more. But we're trying to say there is no sector that is safe. What we need is to come up with measures that will target the PSV, the people who are driving the small vehicles. And in short, if you want to drink, what you're simply trying to tell you is please plan and have somebody to drop you or have a taxi.
Right. But, you know, just looking at this being the festive season, I want to go back to the fact that a lot of lives have been lost this time, and we're soon coming to Easter, and we don't want to keep singing the same story, to keep repeating the same story. So let's go back to the night ban and a clarification here on what exactly is the deadline.
Thank you. The night ban, what we've done is to say that for you to operate at nights, you need to meet certain conditions that are very clear, and your driver will have to be tested, confirm that his eyesight is okay to be able to drive at night, confirm that your vehicle conforms to what we require for it to be at night, and also the company to have a GPS system so that you can track your vehicle, confirm whether it is overspeeding, and all those other things. And you have set out conditions. So far, we've not been able to license anybody because they've not been able to qualify. So therefore, in the meantime, the regulations are such that you can depart as early as 6 in the morning, 6 a.m., and the last departure time is 6 p.m. But to arrive at your destination, you can arrive at any time before 9 p.m.
Okay.
That is the position. And we have instructed all the policemen across the country. And
what have you observed so far? Has there been an increase in perhaps speeding as drivers try to beat the deadline?
I think, let's say the attempt is there. But I want to assure you that also what we've done, we've placed speed cameras across all the major highways. Maybe we cannot be able to place them in each and every road across Kenya. But eventually that is what you want to do. So you put restrictions, and if somebody wants to speed beyond a certain point, again, remember I told you, we are going to have a tracking system that would allow us to know your speed, not by being on the road, by at our control point, because the tracking system can be able to give you the speed. And if a vehicle is not supposed to go beyond 80, we'll be able to know from the control. So we are saying this alone cannot be able to sort our problems, but together with all the other measures that have been put alongside the regulations that we have put, and Kenyans also cooperating, because I think at the end of the day...
And we'll touch on Kenyans and you know, just whether the passenger is enforced enough, is empowered, rather, that's the right word, is empowered. But before we do that, on the night ban, why not ban the heavy trucks, you know, the ones that, the oil tankers and the ones that carry sand, the ones that you can hardly see at night when you're on long stretches of a highway. I was mentioning to you earlier, like if you're coming from Machakos, there's a stretch there between Lukenya and Daystar, which is completely dark, and I'm sure in many other parts of the country. You know, why ban the PSVs and not also some of these that could be seen as hurdles on the roads for a small vehicle that is oncoming?
Thank you. The regulations that we've come up with are regulations for PSV, and that's what we're enforcing now. We will also have regulations for heavy commercial vehicles. We are in discussions with them, And once we have completed, we are going to have it out. But I think also it's good to look at it statistically. If you have two heavy commercial vehicles colliding, the maximum number of fatalities would be 4. The driver, the turnboy, the driver, and the turnboy. But if you have two buses like we've had, it's about 20, it could be 30, it could be even 50, could be worse. So if you're trying to look at human life, you're going to touch areas that are going to have the greatest impact. So, and I think really that is where we are. And like I said before, it's not just about saying they won't go at night or all that. It's that and also the retraining of drivers that we have already said. And after we retrain them, we certify them with a driving license that is going to clearly distinguish those who are trained and those who are not. But it's also going to have a point system. Yeah.
And as I had earlier asked you, is the passenger empowered to take control of the situation? We've had, and I read a message that came in yesterday, and somebody said, every time you open your mouth as a passenger in one of these overloaded matatus or overloaded buses, you know, really, that's your story. First of all, the people around you are in a hurry. They need to get where they're going. So really nobody pays attention to what you're saying. The driver, on the other hand, and even the conductor or what have you, will simply ask you to get out of the bus if you're not comfortable. So are Kenyans, is the ordinary mwananchi, the people that are using these vehicles, empowered to take control of the situation?
I think the awareness must go on in every quarters and in every frontier. But I think the important thing is also for us to be able to create platforms where if people want to complain or to raise an issue, they have that. And therefore, to that extent, one of the regulations we are going to enforce is that all buses are going to have a number outside, so that if you're following behind and the vehicle is misbehaving, you have a number you can call. And a good number of them have already had that. Because there are sometimes you're on the road and you see a bus driving in crazy ways, and you know, you really have no idea what to do. You hope there's a policeman in front, and maybe that's not always the case. Then number 2, the people who are inside will also have a number inside where you can be able to text or probably call, and there'll be action, or at least something.
Is that number out yet?
Not yet, but we are just about to release it because we are doing now the pilot, and I'm sure once that is done, we'll move on. Also, I must commend, we've had this, what you call the Toa Sauti initiative, just trying to tell people that it's not about us, all of us, it's about you as an individual and your life. And if you keep quiet, you will suffer as an individual. So we really want to encourage Kenyans to be out there to help us fish out the guys who are not doing the right thing.
Right, and as we wind up, you know, you mentioned the overloading, the speeding, which, like I said, has been the talk over the years. And then there's this issue of corruption in the roads, the never-ending corruption on our roads. You have all these brilliant ideas and all these policies that you want to enforce and implement. But while corruption remains on our roads with the boys in blue, then this is just, you know, a waste of time for us Kenyans. Yeah, I dare to say.
Yeah, I would agree with you to some good extent, and also to say that Michuki's laws are still there. And they've been there ever since they were enacted. So there was no reason why the implementation of that was stopped at some point. So I think all we want to say is that we may not really want to dwell on the past, but I think there must be, as a nation, we must agree that everybody must change. From the ordinary driver in their own small car to the PSV passenger, who must also agree to take up their role, to the policemen in terms of their role in enforcing the laws, and also to all of us. So I think in reality, we're trying to say that everybody must change. Even the pedestrians, and I want to repeat again, we are coming up with what you call the pedestrian crossing, the bridge. And the reality is that even after we do that, the utility or the utilization of that is about 20%. So you use so much money, and at the end of the day, they don't use it. So I think we also have to agree that we have a role to play. Because before you stop and ask what is the government doing, I think it's also good to ask yourself, what have you done? When you drink yourself till you cannot be able to know where you are, and you get into the car and you want to tell us that the vehicle knows home, surely I think we all have a role to play. And I think I would be urging Kenyans to start this year on the right note. That is not about the police only, or the government, or the Matatu people. In whatever small way we can be able to change this, we'll do it. Good policies without the proper enforcement will also not take us far. So we must also work on the enforcement. And
winding up now, you know, when do we see an end to these knee-jerk reactions where we only hear talk and, you know, talk on this is what we're planning to do, this is what we're going to do going on forward. Every time there's a fatality, we have these knee-jerk reactions. Kenyans are looking for long-lasting solutions. Kenyans are hoping to have safer roads, better roads, well-lit roads. good functioning PSVs, you know, not exhausted drivers, well-paid police officers, so that you don't get that corruption issue on the road. So long-lasting solutions as we wind up.
I think what is achievable, in my opinion, is within reach. If you look at Nairobi, for example, and I believe other cities are going also to follow that example, we have put cameras, we have put the street lights, we have also come up with the traffic lights, and I also want to say that a lot of the problem we have is that many of the people are not complying. So these are not things that have been there in the past. We have now about 16 speed cameras. They could be anywhere in the country. We've introduced alcohol, not for the festive season, but for the whole year and next year and thereafter. So all you're trying to say is that unless we come up with sustainable policies, we are not going to address road safety. And I want to agree with you that we must be able to ensure that throughout the whole year, it's not just about an accident coming and everybody changes. So we will do our part, and also to thank the media, because the other thing that has happened is the issue of highlighting. And by highlighting, you're also increasing the awareness. So letting people know this has happened. There are so many people who have died here. The cause of the accident was this. And by so doing, we are letting Kenyans to also do a self, sort of examination.
Right.
Checking your tire pressure is also very important, because as we know, that accident, it was a tire burst. It could have been anything else. But most motorists will not check their tire pressure. So I guess there are all these issues. We all have a role. We all have a responsibility. This is our country. Even if we demonize the police, unfortunately, the law says they're the ones who will do it. But we must agree that the reforms we've seen, and I'm sure the vetting has been going on, is going to trickle down up to the traffic department, and the good officers will be given the morale, and those who are not good will be weeded out.
Thank you so much. And it is our hope that, you know, there will be improvement on our roads, and that, you know, indeed wishing you well, that you will be a legend like Mishuki, and perhaps we'll be talking about the Lee Kinyanjui rules, you know, in coming years. Thank you so much for your time. Hopefully you've addressed the questions that have been coming in. We're my guest in studio tonight, of course, Lee Kinyanjui, Chairman of the Board of the National Transport and Safety Authority. We'll be right back with the day's sports. Don't go away.